Lee Marvin, name 7 of Hollywood's most sleazeball actors. Lee Marvin was born Lamont Waltman Marvin Jr.B. on February 19, 1924 in New York City. Marvin came into the world during a time when the United States was still feeling the aftershocks of World War I and heading toward the turmoil of the Great Depression. His early life was marked by restlessness and rebellion. He was the son of Lamont Waltman Marvin and Courtney Washington Davidge, both of whom came from families with a strong military tradition. That background would later play an important role in shaping his character both as a man and as an actor. Young Marvin often found himself in trouble at school, eventually being expelled from several institutions, including a military academy due to his unruly nature. That fiery spirit, however, would later translate into the intensity and raw energy he brought to his acting career. When World War II broke out, Marvin, like many young men of his generation, answered the call to serve. At just 18 years old, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, where he became part of the elite 4th Marine Division. His service was not symbolic. It was bloody, dangerous, and marked by real sacrifice. He fought in some of the fiercest battles of the Pacific Theater, including the brutal Battle of Saipan in 1944. During combat, Marvin was struck by machine gunfire, sustaining serious injuries that included a severed sciatic nerve. He was left with a lifelong limp and chronic pain for which he would receive the Purple Heart. His wartime experiences had a profound impact on him, instilling a deep respect for life and shaping the tough, world-weary person that later defined his film roles. Unlike some actors who merely played soldiers, Marvin had truly lived through war, and audiences could sense that authenticity in every performance. After the war, Marvin struggled to find his place in civilian life. He worked at various odd jobs, including plumbing and as a store clerk, but nothing seemed to feed his restless energy. Almost by chance, he stumbled into acting, starting as a set carpenter at a small theater. Soon, his striking looks, commanding voice, and natural presence led him onto the stage itself. He began performing in off-Broadway productions and touring shows, gradually honing his craft. By the early 1950s, Marvin transitioned into Hollywood, first taking small roles in films and television. With his tall, lean frame, craggy features, and authoritative evis, he was often cast as a villain, outlaw, or tough soldier. While these roles may have typecast him at first, Marvin brought depth and complexity to them, making him stand out among the sea-off stereotypical heavies of the era. His breakthrough came in the 1960s when directors and audiences alike began to recognize his extraordinary talent. One of his most iconic performances was in Killers, 1964, where he played a killing hitman. His understated menace made a lasting impression and elevated him from a supporting actor to a leading man. In 1965, he delivered a career-defining performance in Cat Ballou, a Western comedy where he played a dual role as both the drunken gunfighter Kid Shalene and the villainous Tim Strawn. The performance hawks not only his toughness, but also his remarkable sense of humor and versatility. For this role, Marvin won the Academy Award for Best Actor, cementing his place as one of Hollywood's top stars. His Oscar acceptance speech, famously short and self-deprecating, reflected the no-nonsense humble personality he carried off-screen throughout. The late 1960s and 1970s, Marvin's star continued to shine brightly. He appeared in films that became classics of their genre, including The Dirty Dozen, 1967, a war film that perfectly suited his military background and persona as a hardened leader of misfits. His role as Major John Reisman became one of the most celebrated of his career and demonstrated his ability to carry a large ensemble cast. He also starred in Point Blank 1967, a stylish and innovative crime thriller that showcased Marvin as a cold, relentless anti-hero. The film would later influence generations of filmmakers and remains a cult classic. His work in Paint Your Wagon, 1969, alongside Clint Eastwood revealed his surprising ability to handle musical comedy. Though he often joked about his lack of singing talent, by the 1970s, Marvin was one of Hollywood's most respected actors, commanding high salaries and starring in major productions such as Emperor of the Earth, 1973, and The Big Red One, 1980. Despite his success, Marvin remained grounded, never fully embracing the of Hollywood. He preferred a quieter lifestyle and often retreated to his ranch in Tucson, Arizona, where he enjoyed fishing, riding, and spending time outdoors. In April 1952, Lee Marvin married Betty Abling, a union that came at a time when his career was just beginning to take shape in Hollywood. Marvin, a decorate World War II veteran who had returned home with both physical scars and a fierce determination to make something of himself, found in Betty a sense of stability and family life that contrasted sharply with the chaos of his early years as a struggling actor. Together they began building a family, and before long they welcomed their first child, a son named Christopher Lamont, born in 1952. Christopher would later become known as a creative spirit in his own right, though his life was marked by challenges and sadly he passed away in 2013. Following Christopher, the couple had 3 daughters, each of whom carried forward the Marvin legacy in their own way. Their daughter, Courtney Lee, who inherited some of her father's sharp-witted resilience, was followed by Cynthia Lewis, who maintained a quieter life outside of the spotlight. Their youngest daughter, Claudia Leslie, born in 1958, added further joy to the family's life, though tragedy struck decades later when she passed away in 2012. For all the demands of Marvin rising stardom, long shoots, grueling schedules, and the temptations of Hollywood, his family life during this period remained an anchor, even if it was far from perfect. As Marvin's career soared throughout the 1950s and 1962, the pressures on his marriage became increasingly intense. His fame brought with it not only fortune and acclaim, but also lifestyle changes and personal choices that strained his relationship with Betty. After years of turbulence and difficulty, the couple separated for 2 years, a painful period that left Betty to raise the children largely on her own. While Marvin's star continued to rise, eventually in January 1967, their marriage formally ended in divorce. The split was a turning point for both of them. Betty went on to carve out her own path while Marvin immersed himself further into the unpredictable of film and celebrity. Decades later, in 2010, Betty shared her story in her candid memoir, Tales of a Hollywood Housewife, a memoir by the first Mrs. Lee Marvin. In the book, she painted an intimate portrait of her years with Marvin, including the highs and lows of living with a man whose personality could be as volatile as it was magnetic. One of the more sensational revelations in her account was her claim that Marvin had engaged in an affair with the celebrated actress and bankcraft oft, a detail that added yet another layer of intrigue to his already colorful personal life. Whether true or not, the allegation underscored the strain their marriage endured as Marvin navigated the temptations and excesses that came with being a leading man in Hollywood following his divorce from Betty. Marvin entered into one of the most publicized and legally significant relationships of his life with Michelle Triola. The arrangements made headlines not only because of Marvin's fame, but also because of the legal battle that followed after they separated, a case that became known as Marvin v. Marvin. This case set a precedent in California regarding palimony and the rights of unmarried partners, and it thrust both Marvin and Triola into the center of a cultural and legal debate about love, money, and responsibility. The ordeal left Marvin emotionalized, but it also seemed to bring about a sense of reflection on what he truly wanted in his personal life. Out of this reflection came a reconnection with his past. Marvin eventually reunited with his child sweetheart Pamela Feely, a woman who had known him long before the fame, the fortune, and the controversies. Their relationship carried a sense of familiarity and grounding, a reminder of simpler days before Hollywood transformed his life. In 1970, the married, and this time, Marvin seemed to find the lasting stability that had eluded him in his earlier relationships. With Pamela by his side, he enjoyed a quieter, more settled domestic life, balancing his demanding career with a partnership that brought him comfort and peace. Their marriage endured the ups and downs of his health struggles in later years and remained strong until Marvin's death in 1987. For a man whose on-screen persona was often tough, brash, and larger than life, Marvin's private journey through love and marriage revealed a more complex figure, someone who stumbled, sought redemption, and ultimately found solace in the companionship of a woman who had known him from the very beginning. Lee Marvin, the tough Marine veteran turned Hollywood star, never held back his opinions about people he didn't respect. Known for his rough voice, tall presence, and his habit of playing tough guys, Marvin brought to Hollywood the same straight-talking attitude he had in the war. Unlike many actors who only pretended to be tough, Marvin was the real deal. Because of that, he had no patience for what he called the Sleazeballs of the businessmen who got ahead by lying, cheating, or hiding behind fake smiles. when someone asked him in a private talk who he thought were Hollywood's worst people. Marvin gave a slow laugh and said, "You want me to name names? Fine, I'll give you 7. What came next was a brutally honest list. Said in the same no-nonsense way Marvin was famous for. First on his list was Tony Curtis. Marvin respected Tony's drive, but couldn't stand his huge ego. Tana thought every mirror in Hollywood was made for him, Marvin said. He had talent, sure, but man, he'd sell out high-sound grandmother for a close-up to Marvin. Curtis showed everything wrong with Hollywood vanity to focused and looks, obsessed with fame, and always chasing attention. Second came Robert Wagner. Marvin said Wagner was a career climber. He had this guy act down perfectly, Marvin said, but behind it, he was working every angle in town. Being sleazy isn't about being mean, it's about being fake, and that guy was as fake as they come. Marvin hated people who used charm to get ahead, and to him, Wagner was one of them. Third was Tab Hunter. Marvin didn't judge Tab for his personal life but disliked how he let studios use him. That kid was a walking publicity stunt. He let the bosses treat him like a puppet, Marvin said. A man's gotta stand up for himself in this business or he's just another piece of meat, to Marvin. Being sleazy also meant buying weak, and he had no respect for men wouldn't fight for their independence. Fourth, Marvin named Robert Evans, the actor who became a producer. Evans waist slickest of the slick, Marvin said. That guy could sell you the Brooklyn Bridge twice before breakfast. Always smiling, always talking fast, but when it was over, you didn't even know what just happened. Marvin, who valued honesty, couldn't stand Hollywood smooth talkers who lived on fake promises. Fifth on the list was Gig Young. Marvin respected his acting skills but had it two-faced he was off-screen. Gig was one of the smoothest talkers you'd ever meet, he said, but underneath, he was rotten. He'd smile at you and cute you down the second you turned around. To Marvin, loyalty mattered more than talent, and Young didn't have it. Sixth was George Hamilton. George spent more time getting a tan than rehearsing, Marvin said. Hollywood's full of phonies, but Hamilton's the king. Always at parties, always flashing that fake smile. But what's behind it? Marvin saw him as the perfect example of Hollywood empty style with no substance. Finally, Marvin called out John Derek. That guy lived off women like it was a job, Marvin said. Every part he ever got was because of who he was. Dating, that's Sleazeball. 101. Marvin hated people who used love or marriage to climb the ladder instead of earning success on their own. When he finished, Marvin leaned back, lit a cigarette, and smirked. Believe it or not, that's the truth as I see it. Hollywood's got good people, tough people, and plenty of phonies, but those even, they take the prize. Sleazeballs, every one of them. This wasn't Marvin trying to be funny or make headlines. It was his honest view of an industry he both loved and distrusted. He had fought in real wars and knew the difference between real men and fake ones. To him, Hollywood was a place that showed a person's true character under pressure. And those even names, in his eyes, completely failed that test. Marvin Blunt List, whether fair or not, gave a glimpse into his strong moral code. He wanted honesty from others because he lived by it himself, even if those actors had fans who would defend them. In Lee Marvin eyes, they would always be filed under one label, Sleazeball, a heavy smoker and drinker. Marvin had health problems near the end of his life. In December 1986, he stayed in the hospital for over 2 weeks because of a lung infection called coccidiomycosis. He had trouble breathing and was given steroids to help. But the treatment caused other serious problems. He had to undergo surgery for damaged intestines. Lee Marvin died of a heart attack on August 29, 1987, at the age of 63. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery.